Alrighty, I'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Public Health's virtual education series, wazooki wo Ehi, Family Conversations. I'm Jamie, the Public Health Worker Supervisor, and joined today by Renelle McKernan, the Public Health Nurse, who will help moderate today's session. The goal of this series is to gather, learn, and share about Ho-Chunk culture, resources, services, and the connection to health. In public health, we focus on prevention, promotion, and protection of the health and well-being of our communities. Health and well-being are rooted in many aspects of our lives, from our physical body, our mental health, our spirit, and the environment that we live in. During these sessions, we will explore topics that can impact our health and well-being, and together we will learn about tools, resources to improve our health and the health of our communities. Today, we are joined by Jill White Eagle and John Pluget, sorry if I said that incorrectly, of House of Wellness Behavioral Health Team. They will give us a presentation today on men's mental health. We will have about 45 minutes for the presentation, followed by a Q&A. Please use the chat function to enter in any comments or questions, and Renelle and I will monitor it. We will have a short amount of time after today's presentation for a Q&A, and you are more than welcome to come off of mute and ask your questions yourself. Remember that today's session is being recorded and will be posted on the Department of Health website page as well as our Facebook page. Everyone, please welcome Joe and John.
Good morning. Thank you guys for inviting us here to do this presentation. We're very happy and honored to receive that invitation. And so when I first heard of this, I communicated with Joel right away. I'm pretty much thick as thieves with Joel, and anytime that there's a chance to collaborate or to work on something, I'm just very happy to do that. And so I just asked Joel if we could maybe do a presentation for men's mental health and kind of like mental health awareness in that kind of aspect. But before I begin, maybe we'll do like brief introductions. Do you want to start off with an introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, my name's Joseph White Eagle. My Ho-Chunk name is Nachkehuk, which means the King of Hearts. And I also have a powwow name. I was getting teased in school about my name from the non-natives about King of Hearts. Where's the Ace of Spades, the Queen of Clubs, or whatever. So I asked my grandfather if I could get a different name, stronger name, like Strikes in the Dark or something like that. But he gave me the name, and that stuck. But he gave me a powwow name. So my powwow name is Hoda Hunk. It means bald eagle chief. So that's my dancing name, powwow name. So when I'm at the Haduska powwow, you call me Hoda Hunk. But yeah, I probably Ho-Chunk. Only Ho-Chunk to have only two names. No. But I come from my father is Morgan White Eagle. My mother's Marie White Eagle. Her maiden name was White Bear. Her mother was a Hall. So from the Hall side, and then my grandfather was Floyd White Eagle, and he came from Frisk Cloud. My great grandpa. So that's me. I'm part of adopted into the Eagle Clan, part of the Sky Clan people. So that's me, and I'm a family man. I come from a blended family. I have 4 boys or 1 daughter. Then I'm my extended family. My brother's boys are all mine, and then my nieces and nephews. And that's like, so I come from a big family. And I'm a warrior. I was in the Marine Corps. I was in combat with the Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and I'll continue working through that with things, being a warrior, the role as a warrior in our Ho-Chunk culture and community. So that's me, and thank you for having us here.
My name is John Pluger. I came to work with the Ho-Chunk Nation approximately 12 years ago in 2014. I resided in Northside Milwaukee. Was born and raised there. I went to the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and to Cardinal Stritch for my master's degree. my dad grew up kind of a little bit in poverty, and sometimes that can shape people good, bad, and indifferent. And he had gotten into some trouble as a young man, and the resolution to that was you can join the military or you can go to jail. And so he chose to go into the military. He went in with a buddy system, and from there he became 6th Special Forces Green Beret prior to Vietnam. My dad's twin, my godfather, he was enlisted into the Air Force, and my dad's grade school best friend, Gordon Thayer, he was a pararescue medic, and he did tours in Vietnam and has a Medal of Honors as well too. So I was raised by some very disciplined and tough men, but very conscientious, loving, caring people. Gordon was a chairman for LCO multiple times, ran Overcomers Ministry, and he was a major influence into why I got into this field, kind of guided me along the way. And so through his Overcomers Ministry, we did outreach programs in Minneapolis, in Mission Gogamon First Nations, and throughout different areas in Wisconsin. And some of the organization objectives sometimes was just bringing clothing and food and other things to people that had low economies or were in the middle of nowhere, or for people that had high needs. I believe he ran a halfway house and a treatment center in the cities as well too. So very accomplished person, kind of set me on this path and prepared me for working here. With that being said, I also was a firefighter previously to coming here, and had a really good sense of brotherhood. And between that and bow hunting, that kind of led me to having a lot of fun and hanging out in the Toma area, Black River Falls area. And that's where I was introduced to Marcus Frank Lewis. And he said, you should consider working for Ho Chunk Nation. And he kind of gave me the ins and outs, and I applied for a position in social services. I went into interview, and I was offered the job, but I did not accept it. It was not the right position and time and timing. A couple weeks later, I got a call from Miss Terry Greendeer, and she asked me to reapply for a position that they were posting in behavioral health. Had a phone interview, which I'd never had up until that point in time, and I was offered a position, and we worked out a time frame where I could move up and move. And so from 2014, I moved to Toma and worked at HHCC Black River Falls. I worked out of the Toma Health Office, and I've been working here at the House of Wellness for many years, probably over 7 years if I were to guess. But yeah, I feel very privileged to work here. I'm constantly humbled by how welcoming people are, how many connections, second family. And so, yeah, it's my honor to be here today, and thank you for your kind attention. Going into men's mental health awareness for the family conversations, I just kind of thought a little bit about this leading up to it, and just thinking about like what really defines as age of adulthood or becoming a man. And so typically in our societies, it's 18. Sometimes in different subcultures, groups, religious practices, they say you turn 12 and now you know what is right and what is wrong. And this is a path that you have. And so there's a lot of variations that we'll kind of go through today of what we consider an adult, or what we consider somebody being able to make their own decisions. So just for today's purposes, I kind of picked out young adulthood based off of 18 to 39. And whenever I kind of communicate that in general, I kind of like identify that as you're a baby adult. At age 18, you're a baby adult. You're starting off your adulthood, and there's so many first experiences still. There's so many milestones that people are looking forward to achieving. And, you know, like it was a big deal for most kids to turn 10, you know, in double digits, you know, to turn 12, to turn 16, 18, 21. just rites of passage. And I think most people would say that in your 18, 19 years, you're just a baby adult, and you're kind of a child adult into your 20s, and through your 30s, most people are kind of figuring that out, like maybe adolescence, maybe if we kind of referred that as an adult, adolescent adult. And then you kind of get into like this middle adulthood for most people, if they have that longevity, it's like 40 to 60 years old. And so at that time, there's other things that people start to reflect upon. What have I accomplished? Where am I at? Where do I want to go? And the family is so important. 18 to 39, the huge emphasis is on friends and social groups and other accomplishments. This other 40 to 60 is this focus on community and family. And then age 60 and up is kind of like this elder status, and that's where you have this, what do I want to accomplish with the time I have left? Joe, do you have any thoughts about young adulthood, middle adulthood?
Yeah, just to add a little bit here, in the cultural life, as a young adult, I did 12 years old, kind of the ceremonies that go on in our culture in the American church, and the ones they talk about, like what you're going, the elders, they kind of like, I was gifted to be with, I was graced to be with my grandfathers, and got to see my elders, and I got to really dive into, they're really into the culture, and got my Indian name, spirit name, and also kind of identity. Like, okay, you're the prayer leader, or you're the warrior, or they kind of try to identify that. They kind of let you know that these are different roles, different hats that you would learn. So as a young adult, you start, as you get up to 18, you start to find your identity. And that's the one thing is, having your identity. And sometimes our children, they don't have that, and no one's telling them, because you start to find out things that you're good at. You're good at certain things. Maybe you're good at servicing people. Maybe you're good at, doing the prayers, or maybe you have a different gifts. I guess they said that's what the elders call, like the gifts that the Mauna creator that he gave you, and you can um, accentuate those gifts, and then you can help your people. It was all about servicing the people, your clan, your service. So identity was an important part, and finding out who are you. So like in the 18 to 39, I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out who they are if they didn't have that what I had with people telling me, oh, hey, you're good at this, or you're good at that, things like that. So I was able to figure out the kind of person that I was and where I wanted to go. And I started to figure that out early on, of being a warrior, being a prayer leader, and then mostly servicing the community and the people. So that's a big key of who are you and where you come from. That's why when we introduce ourselves, we try to introduce our family 4 generations back, so that then people would see, oh, you come from that family, or you come from that family. Oh, you kind of got those characteristics. That family did this, that family did that. So it's really nice that I got to experience some of that. So the identity was real strong in me, and just finding these young adults that haven't figured that out, like, who are you? What is your name? What's your Indian name? What do you want to accomplish? What is your gifts, your spiritual gifts? And some of them don't know, so we try to help them find those gifts of the kind of identity that their gifts present.
Well said. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. That's very well said. I think that like when we're talking about men's mental health, and what goes into it is like what is in the making of a man, and you cannot like have that conversation without childhood, adolescence, your family, culture, community. So well said about that. And I think with young adulthood too, that time frame, just like what are we figuring out? How far are we straying from our values, our principles, our beliefs in education? And then do we come back? Do we come back to what's good and right for us, our family, and our community? And I think that's just such a pivotal time frame. So the purpose and introduction for this PowerPoint is to discuss mental health in a way that will promote communication, support, advocacy for the men in our families, friendships, and communities. And this is really important. So some people would say, well, isn't all mental health important? And it's like, yes, it is. And part of that is how do we support these little ones who are going to be men, and how do we support young men and men in general, and just kind of having some open discussions. And I think part of being open and honest is to being vulnerable. And sometimes in the age that we live in, we're being videotaped and audio recorded. Don't say anything wrong, because you might be on trial for that. You might be accountable for that. And so for if there's anything that goes well in this presentation, you can give all the honor to Joe. And if there's any criticisms or critiques, I'm pretty good at taking a lot of criticism and critique, and you can send that my way. But the purpose of this is really to define what mental health, wellness, or strength is. So if we take the mental aspect out of it, what is it? What else does it mean to have that sense of wellness? Is it? And some people say it's the spiritual part. It's this thought part. It's this internal piece. It's the emotional part. And so we'll kind of really get into the definition and defining that. But just even seeing that is just being well, being good, having, strength and resiliency. We also would like to just go through and recognize signs and symptoms of just any psychological problem or symptom, or to be aware and to be able to really pinpoint that as maybe some of the statistics or probabilities for what young men or middle-aged men or older adults will then kind of exhibit at times. Most things are going to overlap, and but there are some unique characteristics. And of the characteristics that we're saying some men or most men experience these things, it's you just have to take that with a grain of salt, just knowing that everybody is their own individual sets of circumstances. Understanding barriers, just what are the barriers to mental health and wellness? Stigma, what are the things that happen over time to really put a negative view on things, and how that kind of gets propagated in social media and things like that. Social norms, what is a norm in our society? What is normal behavior? What is abnormal behavior? Even that idea of a social norm, that's a construct as well too. And to be able to identify that and understand it. And roles can be very good. Roles can be adaptive, and sometimes it's like this role. I have to be this role or this thing. It can be stressful. It can be a double-edged sword. How to overcome stigma, break the silence, in the sense of how do we start conversations? How do we communicate? Develop resiliency. So resiliency is how do we overcome? What are things that most people that are successful in overcoming problems, what do they use and utilize? And then just protective factors. What are the things that keep us well? And I like to end anything like this is with protocols. Like, what is something simple that you could do and you can implement? And could you do this at a therapeutic dose? So like if I'm go to the doctor and I'm prescribed a baby aspirin for a thrombosine A2 inhibitor that's going to decrease platelet aggregation, it's going to make my blood thinner. Okay, that's the part I needed to know. Oh, it's a blood thinner. What is the dose of it? I should take one a day, and it's going to take this long before it's going to create these desired effect. And then how do you maintain that desired effect over time? That's like a therapeutic dose. And so getting into that is even knowing some things that we do don't work right away. They're not designed to work. They're just the starting point for that.
Yeah. I had experience with some of that too, with some of our young people that suffer with anxiety or things like that, and they get medication to treat the symptoms. And so it was just the symptoms, but they felt like when they get anxiety episode or whatever, they would take these things because they would have a rapid heartbeat, or maybe to calm them down a little bit. And some of these pills were to lower their blood pressure, but then they didn't feel the necessary results of the pill. They would take more, thinking that it was going to calm their anxiety down, like it's treating anxiety, but it's really, it was really treating the symptoms, what the anxiety caused within their own self, and they would almost take themselves to where they had to go in because their blood pressure was so low. And so it's very careful to, to know what you're taking, and, again, a healthy dosage of, really that mental health area is really figuring out other ways besides medication to feel better. So doing some simple exercises of breathing and things like that to calm yourself down, where you can handle the emotional or mental or those, spiritual. There's spiritual things that would give us anxiety or just kind of make us um, feel a little off, I guess we could say, or not understanding why is this, why am I feeling this way? So you got to be careful with some of those medications also.
Excellent point too. And so what you're even referring to is like, am I doing something to treat a symptom, or am I doing something that treats the actual problem?
Yes.
And so like if we're in combat and we have a wound that
Right.
needs a tourniquet, there's no point in putting a band-aid
Right.
on a wound that when we need surgery. We don't need a band-aid.
Right.
And so a lot of things in life is we want relief, and especially when we're dealing with pain. It doesn't matter if it's emotional pain or physical pain. When we're dealing with pain, almost nothing else matters because it's there. It has a voice, or it's persistent. And it has these abilities to limit and impact people. And so it makes sense of why people will go into all different versions of how can we manage and reduce these symptoms, but then the underlying problem is there. Yeah. And so those underlying problems is what we know in our research and our practice, and a lot of it comes down to adverse childhood experiences. If we have a childhood with a lot of safety, security, our basic needs met, we can move forward and do well in life. And when we don't have our basic needs met and things are not safe and they're not secure, or we're dealing with intergenerational effects of problems, and we know that certain communities they were really dealing with intergenerational trauma, historical trauma, genocide by governments, and that alone right there, it's so difficult. It really breaks the emotional, physical, spiritual, psychological well-being kind of aspect. And so as we kind of go into this, we're going to go a little bit more into maladaptive coping and just understanding and just insight and understanding for some of these things. Defining mental health, wellness, and strength. So there's many perspectives in this, and I don't pretend that this is going to cover it, but just like two simple ones is like a multicultural framework and a Western philosophy. So if you look at individualism and the person separate from society and the family, and you're 18, you move out of the house, you get married, you go to school, you get married, this is what you do. That's kind of like maybe an individualism perspective. But in individualism, you have that pathology approach. What is the pathology of an illness? What is the medical model? Where is this? How is it rooted? What are the influences? Is it biology? Is it environment? Is it nature? Is it nurture? Objective evidence, empirical research. So a lot of things sometimes in Western society, they'll say, well, that's correlated. That's not, correlation doesn't prove causation. People even say it almost like correlation doesn't prove causation. You know that. It's almost like a pejorative, to just kind of rule out things that are the unknown, or things that are known, but they're passed down, they're known in different ways, and that they're maybe cultural truths or truths to people and individuals and families. So there's this, and not to knock Western philosophy, but there's a lot of Western philosophy that just wreaks havoc and is not interlined in many different aspects. But Western philosophy has that kind of medical model orientation. And even when they used to call it mental illness, that came from the medical model. It came from so many of these different philosophies. And so we're talking about mental health, mental wellness, strength, resiliency. That speaks power. That resonates. And we had a really good supervisor here, Dr. David Nelson. It was neuro-linguistic, and and how can we use the right language and the right communication, and how that speaks to our subconscious mind, and how we put things into existence and we see things happening. There was just a little bit of a different orientation with that. But the Western philosophy with a medical model incorporates like evidence-based research, and that can only go so far. It's good for a lot of things, and sometimes it's problematic. The collectivism, the spiritual harmony, ancestral resilience, and holistic perspective, that has like more of a multicultural framework, with the emphasis on community, the familiar connection, intergenerational identification of how things pass down through generations, and intergenerational effects, and these ancestral aspects. So one thing that I just kind of think of whenever I think of this, I go back to the thought of like World War II. In World War II era, the military was thinking, how can we win hearts and minds? How can we fight battles without bullets and bombs? And that's where the psychological warfare came in. And it didn't sound good. They said this is psychological warfare. It's like, so they had this military mindset of like, how can we use this and manipulate this? And but it was all basically for a good thing at that time. They said, we want to win hearts and minds, and we want to resolve conflicts without bombs and bullets and and this and that. And so governments have money, and they affect institutions, and they have grants. And at that time, a lot of researchers were looking to say, how are people influenced? Why do people even have certain values? And Maslow reached outside of himself in the perspective at the time. And I believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was he worked with the Blackfoot Nation. And I think that was First Nations in Canada as well. But he studied the Blackfoot Nation, and he saw that some of the most prestigious people, the people that everyone else wanted to identify with within that tribe, was the person who gave away the most. And so when he was researching this and studying this, he said that there were even ceremonial rituals where somebody would give, to somebody that had the least, and the person who had the least sometimes was the person who worked the hardest and gave the most. And they were like this person to aspire to have this like esteem to be like. And it's like, okay, how can a group of individuals have this view, and what does it even mean? And some of the behind it was, if our group doesn't survive, I don't survive. If we don't thrive, I don't thrive. What good is it for me to have the world but to lose my friends and family in the process? And what else could it have meant, and how did they understand it? So he's just throwing all these questions, and understanding and research came from this. And what he came up with is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that basically no matter what the philosophy of the group or collective of the people was, to achieve the highest version of self, altruism, to be altruistic, and to achieve that, you had to understand that where you cannot achieve this highest version of yourself without having food, water, shelter. And they took it a step further: safety, security, love. You have to have all these different components to be able to have these needs. And so that's whenever I think about identifying this throughout cultures and time and space and time, I kind of go back to that. And that was groundbreaking. And still to this day, we use principles and philosophy and strategies from different researchers. And that was very impactful in this towards me and how I view the world.
Yeah, that's very well said. And also just with the Ho-Chunk culture, just wazooki, just loving one another. That's like kind of our cultural like main mission statement, I guess, as a Ho-Chunk, is just loving one another, and then loving yourself. Having respect for yourself, and having respect for others, and just that really brings our Ho-Chunk people together. And you see it like within our funerals and different things that happen. People just surround you. Maybe they haven't even, you guys maybe even gotten altercations at times with words or feelings, but when that thing happens, all that's set aside, and everybody just comes together and just kind of almost like a big hug for all your relatives, and they don't even have to say anything. They just show up and be there, and it's powerful. It's powerful, that love and that extension of love, and it just helps you get through some of the things, the trials and tribulations of life. And when you're out, your spirit's low, or you're mourning, or even when you're sick, just to bring your family around, and just that even just that physical touch and just eye contact is very healing and very helpful when you're going through some of these things.
Good point. And one day, Mario, a security guard here at the house wellness, came up to me. He said, "John, somebody might be coming here, and this is the highlight of their day. Look them in the eyes, say hello to them, be happy to see them." And he said some other words to me that from that time, it just really hit my heart. So now I have a ritual. I come into work, I try to come here early. I go to do an active service, get some office prep, and sign in on the board. And then I go downstairs and I shake Wayne's hand. He does a left-handed handshake. Then I give Mario, I give him a handshake, and it's just this little, but it's like this connection. It's this peace, and with people too. It's like you can have that, and then maybe it's like a brotherhood or a connection to individuals. And I think that that's really important to men, because where else do men get that affection? You know, they're what are the proper ways to get affection? Sometimes it's through sports, and even though it's physical contact, you know, and sometimes it's through teasing and through being able to use humor. And why is humor so important? And going back to mental health, wellness, and strength, it's like it is a strength to have that whole chunk humor, that way of being able to tease people appropriately. And then there's also a fine line between teasing and what, like now it's hurt feelings, or it wasn't in goodness and kindness. It was done differently. And so it was veered from what it was intended. It was veered from what the family and the culture and everybody else wanted for that. And so we want that balance. And going into this, we're just going to kind of transition into the defining mental health, wellness, and strength. Is some people are very particular about the medicine wheel, and I for one, I love it. It's that mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual realm. So some individuals will say, "Oh, that's not a whole chunk thing." It's like, all right, well, it's kind of it is what it is for the an indigenous aspect of being able to say this is the holistic approach: mental health, emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health. And there's different realms, not just the spiritual realm, it's the mental realm, the emotional realm, and how these things are interconnected. And that is, I think, one of the beauties of the Ho-Chunk culture, is that interconnectedness, and to being able to see things through, not just at surface level, and to have that holistic part. The kinship, so for wellness, it's like, who am I? Like for my family, sometimes I'm a protector, sometimes I'm a supporter, sometimes I'm a provider. And what is my roles and expectations? I'm also in my relationships, I'm the baby of my family. So my oldest brother will tell my mom, "Stop babying him. He can bring something to this event. Stop baby. How old is he?" Like, so there's these role relationships. But you know, wellness through cultural connectivity, and through like, what is culture? You know, there's subcultures. There's a culture in Wisconsin. There's more bars than there are churches or religious institutions or hospitals, or combine them all. Let's like, and then maybe there's a drinking culture in college, and you might hear Thirsty Thursday. And this is a tough kind of position for some people. Some people don't have an issue or a problem with that. But if we look at everything through that lens and say, okay, if food is food medicine, if food is medicine, and if we subscribe to that, anything we take in, if I'm hydrating myself, if I'm dehydrating myself, anything is medicine that we kind of take in. Is it good medicine? Is it bad medicine? And over time, is it something that we want? Maybe I don't have a problem with it, but do I want this around my nieces, my nephews, my children, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins? And in that sense, that's an area we're all influenced in different ways, and through our roles, through the kinship, through relationships. Healing practices, medically, right? There's a lot of healing that's done through the medical model and through medical intervention. Psychological, through behavioral health, there's psychological aspects, but there's also recovery aspects, peer recovery, empowering women, post-VOC. There's all this other there's so much more groups that are performed. Motherhood, fatherhood is sacred, right?
Right.
What is one of the best ones? Mending broken hearts.
Yeah.
Mending broken hearts, and to be able to say we're going to go through something, and it's going to hurt, but we're going to go through that because there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. There's a goodness there. There's a path out of here. And sometimes the psychological components is really necessary. It's, EMDR, very good for military trauma, combat trauma, very good for adverse experiences. There's a lot of different therapies that can really take the emotionality and the heightened sense of arousal, all these other symptoms away from the memory. We still have the memory, but it's not like it's happening to us today. And so there's so many gifts of that, but it's just a piece of the puzzle when we're looking at everything. Going into healing practices, sweat lodge ceremony, traditional practices, NAC. I love Native American church. Talking circles, wisdom from the elders, just getting that wisdom, and so it could be clan mothers, it could be variations. How do we gather wisdom and medicine people? Any thoughts about this for as far as any of these indigenous medicine wheel kinships healing practices?
Yeah, they're all worthwhile. I mean, you find what you're comfortable with, and you able to have that spiritual uplift, and then there it helps your emotional, how you feel about things, and then mental, how you think about things. It really helps, like, kind of give you a guide, kind of like a code of conduct, and then even establishing a belief system, like what are you going to believe in? How are you going to believe? Some of our young people, they don't have that in their lives to identify, oh, my family, we're traditional, or we're this, or we're that. And they're just kind of going along and trying to experience some of these things. And I'm open to helping people try to find their spiritual, how they talk to the creator. I'm open for that too. I do sweat ceremonies once a month for people, just to just give them a little, get in the shallow end of it, just kind of experience some of it and how it feels, how it makes them feel, and then maybe they can deal with some of these maybe mental health issues that they may have. And like the NAC, I'm a road man. I practice that. Talking circles, I do those, and just kind of helping people find I guess, their spiritual identity. Kind of helping them find their spiritual gifts even, and that way they can move through it instead of just sitting there. There's an exercise where they say, um, if you look in a mirror, a lot of times we always look back at our culture. Oh, we used to be this, or we're these kind of people. This is how we are. So we're always looking back, like in a mirror, like in our rear view mirror of our car, and we can't see forward, because we're always looking back at, oh, how it used to be. But all those things, they create identity. We come from great people, and it's nice to look back to see how far we come, but not stay back there and romanticize our traditional ways or our ways and stay back there. Oh, we can't do this, so we almost get closed minded to having an open mind to new things. So that really helps when you have that open mind to establish. Maybe you weren't brought around some of these things. Maybe you don't have a spiritual name in the name, that, but you're always able to go back and get it. You're always able to. It's not saying that you missed the boat or anything like that. Whatever time that happens, I think Mauna, the creator, he's going to present that to you when those times come. To introduce yourself to the fireplace, and that fire is part of our culture, and we use that a lot. Whatever we do, prayers and things like that.
Moving into Ho-Chunk Nation's mission statement to promote a high quality of life with holistic healthcare to those we serve, with the emphasis on the traditional Ho-Chunk way of life, to empower each individual and family to make informed decisions regarding their present and future health. And part of the core values is with that respect, empowerment, compassion, stewardship, excellence, and integrity. And it's, when it comes down to it, we have respect for each other and love and integrity. We do what's right, no matter who's watching, no matter, and it's hard. It's hard to do what's right sometimes when you might be consequence for doing what's right. And to be able to embody this, how do we empower people? And how do we empower the people that we serve with? And so as a man coming into this field, I'm so happy to have, sometimes like a brother there, like with me and to connect. And that takes nothing away from anybody else, but it just is to have that and to see that and to have that in this field as well too, I think is very important. The stewardship and excellence, and how do we commit ourselves to that? And so I think it's just important to really, give credit to the health department, and like their mission statements matter. It directs us, it guides us. Yeah. What are we to as far as our core values? And if we really embrace them and remind ourselves about this and communicate this, it can take us a lot further. Just the open discussion for defining mental health for my own input. I just think that mental health and wellness and strength is, are you fulfilled? Do you live a purpose life? Do the things you do they matter? That self-efficacy, like and empowerment, and are we there to enrich the lives of our friends, our family, our community? That's why I love serving the fire department so much. I could be teasing some police officers on a call and then be helping somebody right then and there, and to have brotherhood and a connection, and these group of individuals, they dedicated themselves, they spent time and money and training, and they did this for their communities, whether it was a paid on call or a part-time or a voluntary or full-time departments. I really, anybody who has a heart to serve, and I just have this sense of like a connection with people. And then anybody who's a serviceman or who fought or is a warrior in that kind of sense, and that brings me a connection to my family. But they almost had a 5-star family, or all-American family. They just needed one of the brothers, instead of going into the military, he went to prison, and it would have been the Navy, the Coast Guard, and then they could have had that. But it's just through that connection and that strength. And so for me, it's like, how are you mentally healthy and well? We have some stressful jobs, yeah. And sometimes it doesn't, feel like that we are always very well resourced in whether it's time or in do we have too much responsibility, enough time, and things like that. We are very well resourced in many other ways, and it comes down to our leadership matters. A good leader, presenter, and that has that trickle down effect, and to inspire people and to make people feel valued and loved and important. And what do we do in our workplace to really support our team? Sometimes our team does like initiatives in house wellness, or Manissa recently did a thing for Secret Santa, and it was all gift giving and who gave this, and it was all like a mystery, and figuring just to have some of that camaraderie, because and even in our training, do we train and prepare so much that in the heat of a battle or a situation that we can go through it and work through that. So that's what that means for me, is just how do we take care of ourselves? Are we committing ourselves to good sleep, diet, exercise? I know that this is a high stressful job, so I should really be also too prepared to have healthy limits and exercise and sleep, because it's not when the stress is going to hit. It's or not if it's going to hit, it's when it's going to hit. Joe, what do you think about for defining mental health and wellness?
I think myself is just the balance, staying in balance with all your roles that you play, but also staying in balance with your mental health, physical health. If sometimes we're strength, like I'm strength. Maybe my most core strength is spirituality. Like I do the ways, and then I go there when maybe I don't really attend to the other stuff, like the wellness part, like the physical wellness. I don't work all the time. I still work. I do like a half marathon, like lift weights, but it's like not being sick or whatever, physically sick or anything like that. So just staying in balance with that, and then I was like taking time out to learn some of the things of like even the way that I think, I suffer from PTSD from the war, and I take time, I learn the ways of how I can be around with people and able to talk with people, and So I learned as a stay in balance of what I need. Is there personal time that I need, the self-care, like things that I do, like to meditate, relax, maybe go to a ceremony, maybe do a sweat to help myself get through maybe some of the anxiety that the day brings, or maybe I had altercation with somebody that was negative. And how do I deal with it? How do I accept that? And I really try to just stay in balance without be aware, get self-aware of those things where then have the tools or learn the tools of how to help you stay in balance. So once you're out of balance, then it'll affect your mental health, your emotional health, even your spiritual. You'll start isolating yourself, um, other people. You won't go around too many gatherings or whatever because you're starting to isolate. But able to like identify, hey, I'm feeling this, I'm going through it, and able to speak out and say, hey, I need some help.
Yeah.
Ask for help. And that was probably one of the hardest things is being a Marine and being a leader, just to say, you know what, I need some help, or instead of like in the Marine Corps, you kind of teach you like adapt, overcome, and carry on. And so it kind of closes you off like, well, this is happening. I just got to adapt to it, and I just got to carry on. But this way, I stay in balance with good health, and then ask for help and know where to go to get help. And like we said, we have a lot of good people here that work in behavior health to help with some of that kind of straighten out your thoughts about certain things and where to put them. Have different ceremonies of how to let's put those somewhere. We got to put them somewhere. We can't just let them. We can't just let them be dealt with every day and just keep bringing you down. Otherwise, you won't be able to have a genuine good morning or a hello or things like that because you're off balance.
There you go.
And people will, people will notice that you're off balance. Like your closest friends, they'll be like, "Hey, how's it going? Are you all right?" A lot of times we just say fine because we don't want to do it, but there's a place, a time where you'll have to open up to somebody, and maybe it's just privately, praying with the Creator, having those moments of silence, and being mentally and helping yourself get through it, asking God, the Creator, to help you identify a healing path for you. So that's kind of just staying in balance with all and being aware.
That's so nice, great. So, like when you say that, like this, I encourage the audience, for sake of time, to put your input into defining mental health, wellness, and strength into the chat. And some of the things that Joe said, it's like, yeah, we hear these terms, and we're going to get into that in just a second. And I'll breeze through some of this material, but it's like, proceed until apprehended, right? Pain is weakness leaving the body. Men don't cry, right? Even as a baby, a little, Nehemiah, or bump on the head, pick them up. You're okay. You're okay. What do we do? We're trying to self-soothe, right? Or balancing. You're okay. But also, too, it's like if that goes too far, it's like, no, that pain didn't hurt you. You're okay. Like, oh, these things that are wild and all that happened over the course of this last year, you're all right, right? And we'll just leave that. But it's that checking in with people, your close friends, having that moment. And because, like, I joke around and with Jen Baird and nurse practitioner here, and sometimes she'll put her hand on her hip and she'll say, "Oh, it's fine." I'm like, well, I don't know many things about women, but once I learned that if they got their hand on their hip and they're saying it's fine, I believe them, and I'll just walk away, and she'll laugh and get back here and tease me. But the same is like for men, right? Hey, how's it going? I'd complain, but who would listen? And then you both walk away laughing. But the reality is like, it's a way of sometimes just shutting things out, being humorous. It can mean multiple things, but out of balance. It's a problem. It's an issue. So for Ho Chunk Nation, we also try to use client empowerment, person first language, centering objectives and goals, definitions of health and wellness through the client, through our treatment planning, but also too, it's through our recommendations. We're not just going to take somebody's we're not just going to take somebody's goals and objectives as unhealthy, say, well, it's the client's goals, and we got to work with the client. It's going to be that balance and then taking, what it is and helping to define motivational interviewing, to be able to have insight orientation, all kinds of different things to really lead to a very good treatment plan and definition of what it is that we want in our lives and how to achieve it. So through Our community elders and leaders, we also too divine what things are through the people that and through the communications that we have, and ultimately that's why our leadership is so important. Recognizing signs and symptoms of psychological problems in men. So this is getting into the bread and butter of this. And I'm sorry that we're kind of going over and we're kind of elapsing in there, but we're just having too much fun here and by getting into the bread and butter. But like depression doesn't always present as sadness, especially in men. It's what we're told that we can and cannot do so, socially and what it is. So it doesn't, maybe we can't express it, but a lot of times could it be anger, right? I'm so angry. But even anger is a symptom. It's like the anger is like a mask of another emotion or a problem. And underneath it, did we feel violated, disrespected? What was the belief or thought, or what did not meet our expectation? There's so much that goes underneath this. But even when it comes to depression, we may not always express it the same way. A lot of symptoms follow significant stress. And so it's like, I say the analogy of, it's like stealing a car. If you stole a car and you drive it like it's hot, and all of a sudden you're hitting the brakes, you're hitting the gas, you're taking the turn, eventually the engine breaks down. You break a tie rod, or something happens in the suspension, or problems, the transmission goes. You drive a vehicle like it's stolen, it's going to break down. So a lot of times, a lot of other symptoms and problems follow stress. And what do we go back to? Adverse childhood experiences, the basic needs not being met, a stress for not having that safety, security, these basic foundations, not having that, all these other manifestations of that can kind of come out in what is appropriate or inappropriate, set by norms and standards and their environment and culture. There's so many different variables, but these unrecognizable symptoms, a lot of it is withdrawing. I'm withdrawing from friends, family, responsibilities, previously engaged hobbies or activities, the things that gave me purpose. If I'm doing that, that's a flag, a sign of there's something there. If it's for a small time and you're setting a good boundary, that's a different story. But changes in sleep, routine, energy levels, these can be like little early signs. Maladaptive coping. Coping can be any behavior, even exercise. If it's done out of balance, going back to what Joe was saying, exercise, even diet, if you're going out of balance with diet, that can be problematic. And men experience that too. So many power lifters, weightlifters, and extreme athletes, they also deal with eating disorders. They deal with body dysmorphia, images, things that typically don't come out because they don't feel it's appropriate to so they'll express symptoms in other ways and to let other people know, but substance use or avoidance. Anything about this that you'd like that resonates, or other unrecognized signs that you've seen in friends, family, community as it relates to men in particular?
The only thing that really kind of touched my mind was like to deal with somebody's stress, like when we do isolate ourselves, we men we're like single taskers. Like if you look at all the professions in the world, there's always a man at the top of that profession because you can singly just focus on one thing like that. So they're really good at single tasking. And what happens there too is then besides when some of this stuff comes, these mental health issues, these symptoms and psychological problems, we go into like a nothing box, or we go into like maybe like tuning everything out, and we can absolutely think about nothing. And it helps us de-stress, helps us do that, and keeps us like that. But a lot of times around us, people will say, because they think we're a deep thought or something, we're just trying to defuse or de-stress. That's a way of how we distress. And sometimes people around us, they don't understand that. And then they'll say, what are you thinking about? Like they want to try to help. And then you say, I'm thinking about nothing, and you're just trying to de-stress to get through it. How are you going to respond, or what is your reaction, or those things you got to really identify, how to, when you do that, meditate. And there's a way, probably a process of how you can go through that to come out of the nothing box. And sometimes that's where a lot of fights even happen with maybe your wife or stepmother mother. They're like, you can't tell me you're just sitting there thinking about nothing. You gotta be damn. They want you to say something. And then you start making up things because you want to say something that they want you to say. and you're not. You're just trying to help them out. And sometimes and if you're just truthfully like, I'm just thinking about nothing and helping, just try to de-stress. This is the way we de-stress. And there's studies that people are like, is he still alive? What is he doing? Why is he not thinking about? There's no brain activity. But yeah, that men have that capability of just kind of shut down, or maybe just the one that I do is watch ESPN. And then I'm in like this zone. If someone's telling me something, I'm not listening. I'm maybe just shaking my head and agreeing. My focus is out here because I'll be stressing. I'm trying to, you just gotta give you some time. I think that's another thing. It's just you need time to process some of this stuff within our own self before we respond to a lot of this stuff. So that helps with having these issues, mental health issues. Is some of these coping mechanisms that we have. You got to be able to share it with your family and your loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
So you understand what you're going through. Like just even saying that, I need. And once you know that, you can say, I need a little time. Right now, I don't want to answer, or right now, I don't want, I just need some time. And that's perfectly all right to say that too.
So as we're talking about time, we're running out of it inevitably. This is where I say like and follow for part 2, because I'll go on and then I realize I'm out of time. I apologize. How does the time fly? But just understanding barriers to stigma, social norms, and roles. It's like there's stereotypes, there's myths or unrealistic expectations. And just how that can be a barrier to people seeking help or even recognizing societal norms. They just are influenced by culture, time, religion, technology, politics, and leadership. Overcoming stigma, being able to break that silence. A lot of methods for overcoming that, and even just in our language, how we talk about things, and maybe going into cognitive reframing. Vulnerability is a strength. It's not a weakness. Resilience is bend but don't break. Being able to find time and space of how we check in with our friends and families and make these connections. Just really making connections with individuals, especially important for men. Supporting the man in your life through communication, check-ins, listening without judgment, normalizing help and connection. That aspect of the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, to have approaches to do it that way in that kind of sense. And then just personal protocols, diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep, connection through social engagement, identity, culture. If you feel like you can belong or you feel valued or things that do matter, that self-esteem, being able to be mindful, meditate, ground, insight for early awareness and interventions, having faith-based practices, prayer, spiritual connection. Sometimes it doesn't even matter. It's just the research shows that is so important in having that faith or belief and having a ritual with that, helping other people, supporting your community, having purpose, in that sense. So I'm sorry that we kind of ran out of time here, and I apologize for that. But hopefully we'll be invited back for part 2, and we can kind of get into it a little bit more.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much.
I thank you guys very much for your presentation today. John and Joe, if you guys would like to look at your calendars and get back to us, we have not scheduled yet for August, and we do have August 19th or the 26th open. If you guys would love to do a part 2 for your presentation.
Carefully. Right?
Yeah. Right.
So we'll connect with you after this to figure that out and see if we're welcome to come back.
Yeah.
Perfect. And thank you guys again for today's presentation. As a reminder to everybody watching that it was being recorded today, and it will be on the Department of Health website page and our Facebook page. Next week, Wednesday, is going to be our first summer block party here in Wittenberg at Siga Funmaker Community Center. So wazooki wo'ehi will be taking a break, and we will be on the following Wednesday, June 17th. We will have the health and wellness intern doing a presentation on raising heart-healthy homes. You can use the link today to join all future sessions. If you would like to add the recurring WebEx link to your calendar, you can email Renelle and I. She has put our emails in the chat, as well as she put a link in for the smart sheet, as we would love to get any feedback from anybody listening. If you have any suggestions on future sessions or anybody that you'd like to present. I will give you guys the rest of your day back, and thank you again, Joe and John, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day.